Hello and welcome to your practice. Today our posture is butterfly or Baddha Konasana. And before we get into it, I will help you to move through a flow that incorporates all of the movements of the spine. And we'll work on our mobility of the pelvis. And eventually we'll move into this great stretch. And I'll even show you a restorative version of this posture. So ideally, you will have a folded blanket and 2 blocks available. But if you're missing any of those props, it'll be fine. You'll still be able to do the whole practice without. We're going to start in an easy, comfortable seated position. So begin with a long spine and just let your hands rest on your knees comfortably. You can even close your eyes or find a soft focus. And just allow yourself to feel really rooted and settled. And start to notice your breath flowing in and out as you breathe in through your nose and then back out of your nose. Let your shoulders soften a little bit and feel your neck lengthening. Now it's going to be really important that we mobilize the pelvis and make sure that we have an awareness of the position of the pelvis. So we're going to begin with some seated pelvic tilts. So the way that you're sitting right now, hopefully your pelvis is in a neutral position. And you can even take your hands to your pelvis like this and imagine it as a bowl or a bucket. You want your bucket to be upright. Now, sometimes you might feel like you're kind of like this. Your pelvis is tilting backward. That's called a posterior pelvic tilt, and it's pretty common. So if that is what you are seeing and feeling right now, then what I would recommend is you grab that folded blanket and lift up onto it like this. And that will bring you back to a neutral alignment of your pelvis. If you don't have a blanket available, but you do have a yoga mat, you can roll up the back of your yoga mat and that will work for elevating your hips as well. But you want to find that neutral pelvis. And then from here, we are going to purposefully tip the pelvis backward, posterior tilt, and then come back through neutral, and then tip your pelvis forward. So now it's like you're spilling the bucket forward. And that's called an anterior pelvic tilt. So we'll go back through the middle, go back to posterior, and back through the middle, and back to anterior. Tilt the bucket back, and tilt the bucket forward. Keep going with this, and as you do, try not to go into a full seated cat-cow, where you're really using your whole spine. Just stick with a focus on your pelvic movement. Now, of course, your back and your spine are going to move a little, but we're trying to get more adept at isolating our movements here. So we'll do just 2 more of each, tilting back and forward, tilting back, tilting forward, and then see if you can come right back to a neutral pelvis where that bucket is upright. And just feel that position right in the center. Take a breath. And now we're going to intentionally incorporate more of the spine. We're going to go into that seated cat-cow. And to begin, take a breath. Then start to tilt your pelvis backwards. But instead of stopping there, let your whole spine round forward into forward flexion. And just feel that C curve through your whole spine. It initiates with a backward tilt of your pelvis, and then the whole spine rounds from there. Then start to come back through the center, tilt your pelvis forward, and begin to lift your chest and even lift your chin just a little bit. Not so much that you're throwing your head back and compressing your cervical spine, but just enough of a lift to feel like you're getting that nice, even, gradual back bend throughout your whole spine. Then let's travel back through the center, tilt the pelvis back and round forward. Travel back through the center, tilt your pelvis forward, and gently arch back. And you can keep moving through this seated cat-cow at your own unique pace. Just try to really focus on initiating the movement through your pelvic tilt. Don't forget to breathe as you do this. A lot of times we exhale as we round the spine, and then inhale as you extend the spine. But you can certainly experiment with flipping the breath as well. Let's just flow through one more round of this seated cat-cow. And then when you're feeling even and you're feeling finished there, just come back to your seated position and take a breath. Notice just how that gentle movement maybe altered some of the sensation in your lower back or in your shoulders. It's a great little exercise to alleviate tension. So now you can keep sitting on your blanket if that's helpful. But we're going to go into a side body stretch. So from here, again, begin with a long spine and try to ground through both sits bones. So both butt cheeks are on the floor. We're not lifting up one side. And let's bring our arms out into a T. Touch down on one side of the body and reach the other arm up or up and over. Then come back to the center and switch sides. And this is just to continue warming up the spine and get a little flow. When we're working with these deeper stretches, like Baddha Konasana, it's good for the body to have a little warm up before jumping right in. We'll take one more side body stretch. And then come back to center and release. So next we're going to pick a leg and send it out in front. So you've got one leg outstretched directly in front of you, and the other leg is bent with your foot against the inner thigh. Now this is a posture in and of itself called Janu Shirshasana, or head to knee posture. But as you look down, you'll also notice it's half of a butterfly. So we're really preparing the body ahead of time. Remember that you can add your blanket if at any point you feel like your pelvis is tilting back. Just sit up on that blanket. Just keeping the pelvis neutral might be enough of a challenge. And if that's the case, you're great where you are. Stay put right there and just try to keep from tilting back. Maybe you put your hands on some blocks. Even sitting here, I can feel a stretch in the back of my outstretched leg. So taking a few breaths there. And then in time, if you decide you could use a little bit more sensation, this is where we'll start to initiate the forward bend aspect of this posture by tipping the pelvis forward. So feel your pelvic bucket spilling slightly out in front of you. And that should allow you to take your hands a little bit further forward. And this is head to knee posture. Your head, as you can see, does not actually have to come to your knee. And in fact, if I were to fold all the way down, my head still wouldn't be right at my knee. It would be somewhere around my shin. You might feel a lengthening sensation in the back of your outstretched leg, and you might also feel some release throughout your low and mid back. It's important not to rush a deep stretch like this. Just let your body tell you when it's ready to go a little further, if it's ready to go a little further. And you'll get better at listening to those signals the more you practice tuning in. The breath is a big help because nice, slow, steady breathing will allow your body to release and relax instead of tensing up. Let's take one more breath here. And then bring your hands to the space right underneath your shoulders and come back. Neutral pelvis, long spine. We'll switch sides. We'll start slow, just like we did on the other side. Just trying to find that neutral pelvis and an upright position to begin. Take a few breaths there. And then when you're ready to start your journey forward, initiate by hinging forward, tipping that pelvic bucket anteriorly or forward. And I always remind you that one side of your body might feel very different than the other. So just tune in very carefully to what you need and feel comfortable doing here and now on this side. Maybe now that you've been in for a few breaths, you feel ready to move a little deeper. Another nice little prop you can add, if you're feeling any pain in the knee, you might be experiencing some overstretching or some hypermobility in the knee. So you could roll up a washcloth or a little hand towel and put it behind your knee. And take one more breath here. And then bring the hands right under the shoulders and hinge up slowly. Coming back, taking a breath. Now we're going to come back to our cross-legged seated position. You might still be sitting on your blanket. And we're just going to do a little twist before we get into the posture. So make sure that you are in an upright seated position. And then we'll reach the arms up overhead and twist to one side. One hand can go behind your body like a little kickstand, and the other hand can just rest on your knee. Take a full breath here, and then reach all the way up, and switch directions. Take a breath, and then we'll flow this with the breath, inhaling to reach up and exhaling to revolve. Inhaling up and exhaling to twist. Let's do one more each way, breathing in and breathing out. Inhaling and exhaling. Then come back to center and release. So now we've moved our spines in all 6 directions, which is forward flexion, spinal extension. We've done a side bend or a lateral flexion one way and the other. And then, of course, we've done a twist to the right and a twist to the left. And those are good movements to incorporate into your daily routine, even multiple times a day. Make sure you're moving your spine in all possible directions. So now that we've done that, we should be ready to roll for our posture today, for Baddha Konasana. And you could do this posture for sure with no props at all. If you're feeling pretty mobile, just simply put the soles of the feet together. Start with a long spine. Tilt the pelvis forward. And here we are. Your elbows could be at your inner shins, or they can come in front of your shins. But I'll show you some prop options or some proptions. Of course, the blanket is one. If you feel like your pelvis is tilting backwards, just like in everything today so far, you're going to want to elevate up on a blanket. And for most of us, that is just going to help. It doesn't hurt anyone. It is going to just help to tilt you in the beginning in that position that you're heading towards anyway. So the blanket is a really nice prop. Another prop that is nice is to put a block underneath each thigh. So if you've got your blocks, or even you could use thick books or a rolled towel underneath each thigh, that's a great way to add support. And the closer in your blocks are, the more support you're going to have. So higher up on the leg, more supportive. Lower down or closer to the knee will still offer some support, but just not as much. So, just like I already said, start with the pelvic tilt forward, and you can keep your elbows at the shins or inner thighs, or you can place them out in front. And we'll stay there for about 3 more cycles of breath. Getting that nice stretch in the lower back and the inner thighs and the outer hips. And when you feel like you've had enough, let out one more big exhalation. Really melting in. And then slowly hinge back up to an upright seated position. Notice how you feel. And then we'll do a little bonus round today of a restorative butterfly or Supta Baddha Konasana, which is probably my favorite way to experience this posture. So if you are not using a blanket today, or maybe you're not using blocks either, if you have no props, you can still play along. Just simply support yourself as you come down onto your back and you're in it. And then you can make 2 fists and put one underneath each upper thigh. Really, really nice. But for a little more deluxe treatment, I'm going to show you this really wonderful blanket wrap. You're going to take your blanket, and I've got it here folded in half, like this. I'm going to fold it in half again the other way, so it's a big rectangle. And then I'm going to bring those edges together. So now I've got this really long, sort of skinny, extended blanket. I'm going to take that, I'll turn this way, and place it on top of my feet like a cover. And then I'm going to take the two edges, lift up my knees, and tuck them underneath my ankles and my shins. So there's sort of a little pillow for your calves and shins here. You don't have to tug really, really tight, but some people like a snug fit there. So just see what you like. It's mostly this support underneath that's going to do the magic. So you got your blanket, put it over your feet, lift and tuck the tails under, just like that. Then, for extra support, put one of those blocks underneath each outer thigh and slowly roll on down. You might need to adjust once you're down here, adjust your blocks. And you can roll your shoulders back and place your palms up. Or you can try cactus arms. Or another great experience is to just place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly so that you can feel the waves and the movement of your breath. Now, if you're like me, you love being in this posture, and if you can't get enough, just stay right where you are. If you're ready to move on with your practice or your day, draw your knees into your chest. Maybe take a little rock from side to side. And eventually roll over onto one side, and then press yourself all the way up to a seated position. And from here, you can keep on flowing or thank your body for another great movement practice. And I thank you for practicing with me today. Have a great day or evening. Namaste.